Hey there folks, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and today we're back with some Insurgency Sandstorm, a game that I've been picking up a lot recently, but have steadily been putting down, and I'm going to be talking about that in this video today. Insurgency Sandstorm, whilst probably going to be a huge commercial success on console, or at least do relatively well when it eventually releases over there, is certainly struggling on the PC base. Now, on the PC, us guys have had it for a long while now, and I've got to say, the content available feels very stale. NWI has announced they're working on new maps, new modes, and also stuff like AI overhauls and new weapons, but the new maps / map, give or take, because there really isn't that many coming at the moment, I think there's only 1 or 2 announced, really don't seem to fit the bill in terms of what people want content-wise from this game. Insurgency Sandstorm more or less has a perfected core gameplay loop, so it's quite difficult to understand why content has been so slow and sluggish, especially when they're using the Unreal Engine in something that universally is known for being relatively fair in terms of map development. Of course, people at NWI are probably creating their own assets and stuff like that, which does take time, but in terms of actually putting maps together, it isn't really all that difficult on UE4. It's probably one of the easiest, in fact, if you look at games like Squad and many others that use modding support from UE4. Naturally, I'm not saying this to discourage anybody or say that the developers are bad at their jobs or anything like that. I'm just kind of curious in terms of what the development process is that's making things like map content take so long. I'm sure it probably is something down to the fact that NWI do like to go a little bit extravagant with each map release. They like to try something a little bit different, and also down to the fact that there probably is some artistic level of things that have to come along, or at least to some degree some asset creation for these maps that does take time. But in terms of what this game needs the most right now, it really simply is content. I feel as though the PC base is suffering quite exponentially at the moment from just a drought of content, and this is a familiar trend in February. You know, we're talking 2 months after Christmas, where most developers are on holiday for a long, extended period of time, and not a lot is up at the office, you know, regardless of what development studio it is, be it DICE, NWI, Activision, who actually are a publisher, but you get the drift. Everybody was on a break, everybody wasn't really doing anything, and now I think a lot of players are kind of seeing that. I think Call of Duty is probably the only one that's kind of stepped forward and gone, haha, we had something planned, here's some stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, it's been a relatively slow start to 2020, and NWI is no exception to that, and the game that they've produced, being Insurgency Sandstorm, certainly doesn't appear to be any exception to that either. But considering that the content kind of drip was pretty slow before this, I think people were expecting a little bit more. Yes, there is a new announcement of maps, modes, and AI overhauls. Yes, the co-op mode is fantastic, and that's probably going to get some love and attention too. But for the most part, I feel as though the multiplayer players of Insurgency Sandstorm, which is where it kind of made its name on PC, is struggling quite exceptionally at the moment, and certainly some players are kind of struggling with optimization. Now, UE4 is an engine that can be as demanding as you code it to be. Some UE4 games will run like an absolute dream, some Unreal Engine 4 games will run like a potato. Certainly in the early days of Squad development, that game ran like a potato. Now it runs like a dream, or runs relatively well. There's still room for improvement, and optimization passes certainly do need to be something on the priority list for this game. Now, whilst I personally can't say I've had any trouble or any experiences with how this game runs on PC, I know a couple of people have complained here or there. And again, you know, I can kind of attest to, again, just being somebody with a beefy rig, I can't really say, oh yeah, you know, this game is greatly optimized, because, you know, when you reach a certain level of PC power, you kind of forget that that's a thing. And again, I say this quite a lot in my videos, because I do like to leave it as a disclaimer. It's not a flex of me going, oh, my PC is so-and-so. It's more a case of, I don't want people to get the wrong impression about my impressions of things like optimization and frame rates, because having the setup I do, which is a 2080 Ti and i9-9900K, it's very difficult to notice issues in terms of optimization unless it's strikingly obvious in a very early in development game, which Insurgency Sandstorm now really isn't. This is a full-blown release, so some optimization passes, or at least something to try and alleviate some frame rate for some players, could be nice to see. I don't think it's necessarily top of the priority list, but it's definitely there. Now, there is a saving grace to all of this, and that is the fact that Squad and games on UE4 have the ability to release their SDKs and allow people to start doing their own work in terms of maps and modding tools. And the people behind Insurgency Sandstorm have released a blog post detailing some of the first information about some of these maps. So it's a mod tools alpha. The modding tools of roughly 200 people at the moment. I imagine that number's a little bit higher now because this blog post is about a week and a bit old. Is certainly working on something that could create much more content for the game at a very consistent rate, because modding tools are the saving grace for any game like Insurgency. You don't need to continue to create content as a developer because people will do it for you. They will release their own maps as projects of their own to build their own portfolios, to do something that they want to do in the game. And so far we've already got some stuff. There's one guy who's creating a map based off the aftermath disaster of Battlefield 3, or at least that was the inspiration for it. There's some screenshots on the page right now, and it's very early, it's very bare bones at the moment, but you can see how that could create an interesting gameplay dynamic, and it's something that would work. You know, stuff like this is going to be great. But the next one for me really shows the potential here, and this is a map by the guy called Invalid Nick, and he has a map called Wolfland. Now, something that really bothers me about Insurgency is that it feels very samey in places. Insurgency, in terms of map design, has done a great job of creating these good maps, but the variance between them isn't that heavy, and for once we're seeing one here which is mostly just an open forest type map, and that's super exciting because it takes the game to a whole new context and setting that will introduce more players back into the ecosystem. Insurgency in the old days was at its finest when people could do whatever they want with the game, and hopefully Insurgency Sandstorm can push into this place. But I say this with a pinch of salt because development is going to be important. When this game eventually does release on console, I doubt modding support is going to be immediately available at all on console. I feel as though they will either have to pay for modded maps to be ported over to the console version, or they're just going to have to live with the content they have. So I'm really hoping to see something come out of NWI soon in the future to really solidify the base of this game a little bit more and give people on PC and console a little bit more hope for the future of the game, because at the moment it seems a little bit questionable in places, and that's not something a game like Insurgency and the reputation it has should be battling with. But anywho folks, it's been me today, TheTacticalBrit. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again in another video.